ahead and call to order this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District. May I have the roll call, please?
Director Morgan.
Present.
Director Kildee.
Here.
Director Craven.
Here.
Secretary McDonald.
Here.
Chair Tremblay.
Present. Let's see, Mr. Kildee, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
No amendments to the agenda.
Mr.
right.
Chair, I would like to request that we pull item B from the consent calendar.
I was going to ask for that myself, Mrs. McDonald, so thank you. We will go ahead and do that. Let me just, we'll go ahead and keep minutes on the item A, minutes on the consent calendar. So when I call for that, it'll be just item A, and we'll
Move the
pull B
approval.
off.
Move the approval of the minutes.
You can't do that yet.
Oh, that's
Sorry,
right.
Mrs. Craven. Are there any public comments? Okay, Mrs. Craven.
Move the approval of the consent calendar, which now consists of item A, the minutes.
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. Please vote. And that is adopted 5-0. We'll now move to item 3B, which is no longer on the consent calendar. That is the Engineering Design Services Amendment to the Joint City Council/CSD On-Call Professional Services Agreement. I'm not aware that there is a staff presentation per se, so, but unless Mr. Klotzel, you'd like to make any, all right. So, Mrs. McDonald, I think the appropriate protocol would be to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and start, and we'll go from there.
Well, the reason I asked that it be pulled is I would like to vote on it separately and just make a couple of comments, and I'll do the same thing over on the City Council side. The main purpose of this is to study the widening of Las Posas between, what are we going up to, from Pleasant Valley to Ventura Boulevard, and widening it from 4 to 6 lanes. And partly, my understanding is because of an expansion at the airport. And I do not believe that has been invented. As far as the public goes, I think it's being rushed through. And if indeed it is because of the that increase or that development at the airport, I don't think the city of Camarillo should be paying the price to do any of the studies. It should be who wants to have that work done. And I don't believe, it may have been way back in somewhere in our CIP budget that this existed, that someday it might be 6 lanes, but it was never on my radar. And it really isn't something that I think is appropriate to go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes and then back to 2. And so for that reason, I just wanted to vote no.
All right, I'm actually going to ask some questions, but I think it's going to be after Mr. Morgan, because you just raised your hand.
Right. Being on the airport authority and this being brought up, I've been against doing that until something happens in the county side. I can see an on-ramp that comes from that new project, but turning into 6 lanes all the way down, county's going to have to do some of that paying, not us, because they want an extra lane that goes into the airport, into the fire department area also. Well, that all is to benefit the county. I think that at this time, I think we're going way premature until we see what the county's going to do actually. Remember, they were going to come back and tell us they're going to do some things if they were going to do anything. And so I can't vote for this today.
All right. What I'd like to do is ask a series of questions because this staff report and it being on consent calendar caught my eye as well. And I think it's important because probably very few folks out in the audience have any idea what in the world we are talking about. So I think it's important to get some context here. First of all, this item is to authorize the district manager to execute an agreement with an engineering firm for conceptual design services for widening Las Posas Road to 6 lanes from Pleasant Valley Road to Ventura Boulevard. This existing consultant that is doing work for the city and the district has been doing other work unrelated to this particular matter. The reason, as I understand it, that it's in front of the Sanitary District Board as well as the City Council is that a long time ago, both the Sanitary District and the City Council were signatories to this agreement, and so therefore that's why why it's coming up first tonight in front of the Sand District Board.
That's correct.
And we have the same item, I know, actually at this point, still on the consent calendar for the City Council meeting, but I think it's appropriate to ask these questions now. So with all of that in mind, and I know that this matter has been reviewed previously in study session, but looking at this matter as an integrated whole, what caught my eye in the staff report is that the need for widening is based on the existing, and I quote, on the existing and expected future traffic volumes, which cause this existing 4-lane section of Las Posas Road to function at less than the city's acceptable threshold level of service, C. I'm also aware that in the exhibit to this agreement, the consultant is saying, and I quote under big page B5, the consultant is saying, this study will review existing and future traffic impacts to Las Posas Road and any intersections due to impacts from Camarillo Airport. But I also know that later on the council's agenda tonight, there is a mitigation fee item under item 3I, big page 5, and that mentions, I guess it's probably the right way to phrase it is that there's an anticipation that there will be a general plan amendment referral application submitted for a sports park at Pleasant Valley Road and Las Posas. Well, that's how I'm reading page I-5, so if I've misread it, it's on page I-5, 3I-5.
Under City Council.
Under City Council, under the scope of services for ITERIS. And this is the proposal for amendment number 1 to Camarillo impact fee update for latest traffic circulation improvement plan and proposed US 101 northbound auxiliary lanes. So when I read those together in juxtaposition, those to me seem like we need to talk about it as an integrated whole. So finally now, coming to my question, my understanding from staff based on that study session is that the need for this work was based on the existing traffic volumes in that stretch of road as they are right now because of the level of service issues, without adding into the mix future anticipated traffic volumes attributable to the hangar project at the airport or potentially the sports park. Is my understanding correct or incorrect?
In general, yes, that is correct. The traffic modeling, not including those, the airport and then the sports facility that you're referencing down at the intersection of Pleasant Valley and Las Posas.
Right.
Right. So I would like to clarify, though, in that item, it's ahead on the agenda, but you referenced that, the consent 3I, big page 5, that is referencing the existing sports park development, essentially Village of the Park in its entirety, and including the sports park out there. This is not referencing the proposed, yet to be submitted other sports facility.
So that's referencing PV Fields.
That's correct.
As opposed to, but that said, I've seen reports that there is anticipation that the developer or proposed, there may be a general plan amendment referral application filed with the city for a sports park or a sports center or a sports facility at the corner of Pleasant Valley and Las Posas, correct? I've seen that in reports.
There was a request last year, obviously, that was analyzed and was not allowed to proceed on through a referral process. I've been in contact as a follow-up to inquiries from that developer in particular, and from what I understand, they are not going to be filing a general plan amendment referral application for this cycle.
Okay, because what I just said, I took out of a recent Economic Development Committee report that I read. So that was my understanding based on that report that was provided to me. Okay, so let's go back then. So let's say that's off to the side. Let's go back to the primary question, which is this work to be done premised on existing traffic volumes as they are right now, or because of additional work? It goes to Mrs. McDonald's question, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It's
both. So, and as Councilmember McDonald mentioned, that this item has been identified in our CIP document for some time. It's been a part of our traffic mitigation fee program for a number of years, quite a few years, and identifying the potential need based on future anticipated traffic volumes that a widening of Las Posas, the stretch of Las Posas, would be required to operate at level service C or better. Currently, so based on the current counts, are at 26,000 daily trips, average daily trips, which under our adoptive circulation element for primary arterials is listed at operating nearly at LOS, level service D, for 26,000 ADT for a 4-lane arterial.
For a 4-lane.
4-lane. That's current existing counts that have been verified recently within the traffic study that was prepared for the Hotel Conference Center that confirmed the existing traffic counts along with our own.
Right, that was in the EIR.
Traffic counts, correct. The projected forecast for 2030 is at 33,000 average daily trips for this stretch of Las Posas. Under a current 4-lane configuration, that would operate at LOS F, level service F, for 33,000, a volume of 33,000 trips.
So let me recap it a different way. Regardless of the proposed development of the hangar project at the airport, or whatever improvements may be constructed or proposed by the county at the airport, is it staff's opinion that this segment of Pleasant Valley Road needs to be widened to 6 lanes?
Correct, based on the existing and future traffic volumes, yes.
Well, is it based on just existing traffic volumes, or is it because of existing plus future? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
I'm not trying to pick nits with
I-
Mrs. McDonald's. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Could I just ask one thing that I think is missing from your question?
Sure.
Do you anticipate additional traffic without any development at the airport, or are you looking
Yes.
only at future development at the airport?
No, it's
that
that
what you're-
future number is our traffic forecast model based on build out of the city's general plan as currently zoned. So that would not include anticipation of that other sports facility that isn't even in the zoning.
So
mix.
if nothing else changed, we found ourselves static as of right now, staff's opinion would be we still need to look at the efficacy of widening that segment of roadway to 6 lanes from 4, even if there's no other improvements done.
It's going to hit 2 lanes.
Correct. Based on the existing traffic volumes, yes, we're
Okay.
there at operating nearly at LOS D.
Right now.
And I'll also add in the timing here has come up because of the need to identify the right-of-way width and improvement widths necessary for this eventual future widening. We don't know when that construction is actually going to happen. We're at the very preliminary advanced planning stage to identify the width requirements and the lane configuration such to identify what requirements would be placed on development at the airport, specifically the hangar project, which is moving forward, that to identify where those improvements would need to be planned for, the future improvements. Any development out there needs to be planned for accordingly with what ultimate future width is going to be required for the widening.
And I also understand, segueing to the airport improvements, that what the county staff is anticipating for environmental review of that proposed project is a joint CEQA and NEPA document. That might be a better question for Mr. Vaca rather than you, but is that a correct understanding?
Yes,
Okay, which is going to take some time to complete.
that's correct.
Would the work that is being done by this contract then be of use in informing the city's review of whatever environmental document comes out of the county's process? In other words, is it going to be useful to us, to the city,
I believe so, yes.
in
Very
terms of
useful.
evaluating what the county wants to do with that hangar project?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But shouldn't to me, if the county's doing that, the streets have to be part of the study.
Yes.
They can't do it in isolation. So this should be on the back of the county as they go forward with their project. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but could I
No,
ask another question?
Keep going.
If you're telling me that with no general plan amendments, with the general plan the way it is today, that you're going to have that large increase in traffic, what is going to be built between Las Posas and Ventura Boulevard? There's an airport,
Right.
and there's a vacant lot or vacant acreage.
Hotel.
Right. And it's not
But
just
that's not between Ventura and Where are those people going? The hotels go in the other direction,
the other developments within the city are going to generate trips that will use this section of road.
coming from where?
Coming to
Going
and from
where?
the city, into the county, to Oxnard, to
So you're going to
PCH.
take
The bases.
So you're going to take a 4-lane road, you're going to open it up for this very short section to 6, and then you're going to take it down to 2 lanes back to the county.
And the county has plans to analyze the need for widening that also. That's on their plans.
And that was one of the questions you were going to find out, is when they had planned on doing that.
Yeah, we presented that at study session on October 24th.
Thought we didn't have.
It was years. It's not today, not very
Let
soon.
them tell what it was.
I know, it's our
So
study
you're
session.
correct. The exact date for when, let me get the information correct. Well, that was a big study session item.
Yeah, it was.
So the first item on the book for the county is to look at a feasibility study for widening Pleasant Valley Road from Rice Avenue up to Las Posas Road. And that's scheduled for fiscal year 2019-20 for a feasibility study. And then the stretch of Las Posas, they're starting further down south from Hueneme Road up to 5th Street with a feasibility study for that widening, followed by, and then that's scheduled for 2021 fiscal year. And then the next stretch from 5th Street up to Pleasant Valley would follow after that, and that's correct. There's no date determined for that. And there's no information from the county to provide a date at this point for that.
And the other, if I might just, the other thing you were going to find out for us is my recollection was when the fire station was approved with access onto Las Posas, that was going to be the only access off the airport onto Las Posas.
So there is an agreement in place between the county and the city for that, specifically for the installation of that signal. And that addresses specifically the signal only. And there are no further restrictions for other access off of Las Posas as a part of that agreement.
For the signal.
That's correct.
So it was a discussion, not in the agreement.
We're continuing to research if there's anything else in place, but as of tonight, there is no other documentation for any other restrictions of access.
No written memorialization.
Correct.
Okay. I think Mr. Morgan was on deck, and then followed by Mrs. Craven.
Yeah, a couple things, because we discussed this at length, both at the Airport Authority and our study session. And one of the problems I see is if you don't have the county coming in proving that roadway between between Pleasant Valley Road and the 5th Street, you're going to have a problem because you can't get past level D because you're going to have 4 lanes coming into 2. How do you expect that to make any improvements if the lanes on the other side are only 1? That's coming from this, coming from Camarillo to that area. It's still going to be in level F. That's not going to improve it until that section is done. Now, you're talking about Pleasant Valley Road that's the first one. That's because all the traffic backed up Pleasant Valley all the way from the industries and other people cutting over to Oxnard and Hueneme have learned to use that road and 5th Street because 5th Street's the other roadway that they use. That's a big bad situation right now. Get out there at 4 or 5 o'clock, and see how long you have to wait for that stoplight. Okay, because this isn't going to help that until they get that lane over on the other side finished. then you might have some help. That's why I'm wondering if we're a little too premature until the county has set a time when they're going to build that.
Are you-
Done.
Are you formulating a question? No, there's no question. Penn.
Well, I asked him, is it going to be any better traffic with 3 lanes going into the one than it is if we, without fixing that lane? How's that going to help?
I'll be able to answer that question if we proceed with this work of conceptual design and advanced planning. At this point, I can't answer that, but that's what this step is intended to do, is to answer those types of questions.
I think what I was hoping you'd say, yeah, it's going to be a problem for a while until they get that finished.
Well,
Because you can't say it's not.
Existing condition is going to continue until something's done.
Exactly.
all right, Mrs. Craven.
I have 2 things. One thing is this says that they're going to also bring us back alternatives, and even though at the study session it was pointed out that according to the plan, it would still continue to have 1 right turn lane. I've talked to a lot of people who go turn right, and I would hope that there would be 1 alternative that would be studied with 2 right turn lanes as you're southbound. Especially if Pleasant Valley is going to be widened. There are a lot of people who go to the right and follow Pleasant Valley from Las Posas. But my comment on this one is that I believe that if we're going to study what we need in the city, we need to have it our study. If we want to have the airport pay for part of it, that's one thing. That would be a separate agreement. But it needs to be our study. We need to determine what we need. We don't need some other government agency to tell us what we need. And so I can support this because it is to tell us what we need in the future. And I'm hoping it will look at what the county is planning to do in those timelines.
Mr. Khalid?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up. I think what the airport potentially wants to do will have a significant impact on the city. It was not, in my opinion, very well vetted at the airport authority for a number of reasons. However, I do think that we need to get some data gathered here. And I'm a little bit, it's interesting to me to see that we're at, I believe, Dave, you said 6,000 trips, and in 10 to 15 years it could be up to 33,000 trips. If that number is somewhat correct, which I think we don't quite know exactly, I'm hoping this study will help us determine what that's a significant jump. Now, as Mrs. McDonald said, I don't quite know where all that traffic's going to be originated from, but I'd like to get some more data to see if that, in fact, is somewhere in that ballpark, because that's a significant jump up here. So I do think that we need to start this process here and get some data, so all of us that are up here can get some data between us here and say, look, this is what the study says, so we're not necessarily just, flying at a certain altitude here. As we all know, traffic is increasing for various reasons. We're all aware of that. But I do think that obviously what's been brought up here that, the county has got, you go from a 2-lane to a 4 to a 6, and I get that. It's bottleneck. We all know how it is in Ventura. We've lived with that for many, many years. But I do think that we need to get some kind of data about what's going on. But I will say, when this other situation pops up, especially with the airport, I for sure am going to have a whole lot to say about it, and I hope that a lot of others will as well.
Well, I have a couple of comments. No, actually, I still have a question, Mr. Klotz. I'm still struggling with this. Would it be fair to say that in staff's view, the city needs this study based just on existing conditions even without adding in the new airport project?
That is fair to say.
Okay. So we'll see how many ways I can figure out how to repeat the same thing. But it's based on existing conditions. Correct?
Correct, especially with the timing of the need to identify if there is a need for ultimate width out there and how that's going to impact anything that is built along this stretch of Las Posas.
And I see from the scope of work, and specifically I'm referring to big page B7 and the components of the widening study, is that there are there's very specific work set up for assessment of existing traffic conditions and existing traffic conditions with project and assessment of future traffic conditions. So that's part of the work of this contract, correct?
That's correct.
And is it also fair to say, and I apologize for being redundant, is it also fair to say that the work that this consultant will perform will inform the city's review of whatever environmental documents the county is going to produce?
Yes.
Okay. Well, for both of those reasons, based on this is being done based on the way it is right now, even without the airport being in place. And number two, it would inform the city's ability and the city's and council's analysis of whatever environmental review documents are going to be coming out from the county, which we don't know what those are going to be yet. I can support this because I think the city is going to need this information.
Can I just add
Mrs. Craven.
one other thing that I neglected to say earlier? I can remember long ago during discussions of, well before we made definite plans for a hotel convention center, I can remember the discussions with people from the university. They were very, very much for this because they felt that a convention center would be very beneficial to them, especially if a hotel was attached to it. So I believe that there will be a lot of traffic coming from the hotel convention center, turning south on Ventura, south on Las Posas, and then going out to the university through Laguna Road or maybe Pleasant Valley or one of those others that goes on over to Lewis. At times.
Mr. Morgan?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask one question? Maybe of you. How can this consultant assess the future pedestrian bicycle conditions, the future conditions with new projects when we don't know what those projects are?
That's actually an appropriate question to ask our Public Works Director.
I mean, I know you. I'm asking you kind of because you came to the conclusion that was good, but how do you do it?
Well, no, I didn't write the scope of the contract. I didn't discuss it with anybody.
I mean, I can see what you were going for was, okay, today, which I kind of disagree with. I think we've got other streets in town that are worse than this one, but...
No, but that's not the point. I just wanted to know why we needed this agreement. I mean, to be fair, is it based on the extant conditions? Or is it based on future? And what I'm hearing is something a little different than what was in the staff report, and that is that the staff is saying that it's based on existing conditions the way they are now. And I don't want to stick my head in the sand. If it's something that we need because of existing level of service D conditions, anyway, keep going. I think that's a question you should pose to Mr. Klotzel.
So what is it they study?
So any study is based on what is known at the time, including our general plan, our zoning maps, our forecasted developments. That is what is included in any study of this sort, and that's what it will be based on.
So not what the airport's going to do, not potential general plan amendments, the sports park, which Mr. Tremblay talked about, only on today's existing, what we know today.
What we know is planned today, and we know of 2 items that are planned at the airport, so that will be included. Those the hangar project at the northeast corner and the fire training facility at the, if you will, southeast corner of the airport.
I just have one more comment, then I'll be quiet. But it's the old build it and they shall come, and I hate to see us build something. This is not a contract to have somebody build a new street. But it's the start of it, and that's where it starts. And pretty soon we have the study on the shelf that says we can do it, and this is how you do it. And then the next thing, well, you already got the study, you know how to do it, so okay, let's approve it. It's that snowball effect that's how we get where we get with so many of these projects.
Well, the difficulty I have with that is having a study isn't in and of itself some sort of growth-inducing impact. Where I'm coming from is trying to figure out I have my own skepticism about whatever environmental review document comes out from the county. Let me just put it that way. And it's going to be a joint CEQA NEPA review. And I think that's going to take a while. I would like the city to be in a position, I'd like to have the council in an informed position to be able to respond to that and critique it. And I guess where I'm coming from, Mrs. McDonald, is if we have, I think this study lends value to that process. It informs a future decision of this council. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in favor of it.
Gotcha. All right.
Mr. Morgan.
Tony, I'd be all for this if they showed us a plan to extend Pleasant Valley to 5th Street, where you'd have 2 lanes, and that would alleviate a lot of the traffic jam there, a lot, significantly. But they have no plans of when or if they're going to expand that. And I think we need that information before we can start planning things to come to a jam. You're still going to be an F with that like that.
Go ahead, Mr.
Just
Kildee.
one more question. Yeah, Dave, so I just want to get back in your professional opinion. Even without the county doing anything, as it stands right now, are you of the opinion that we need to start this study just to deal with the traffic that's generated right now?
Yes, it's prudent and makes sense to do that at this point, knowing what we know now with the volumes and the planned projects.
And we have tried to make our intersections not less than a level D since I've been up here.
That's correct.
That is one of the reasons why we put in the Springville, because at that intersection on Las Posas, it was at a level D or very, very close to that. That's one of the reasons why we put in Springville. Is that not right?
Correct.
Okay. And that did help the numbers for the time being. When Springville did come into action here, it did help those numbers on Las Posas. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, it's our only F in town. That intersection. 3 times you'd had to wait for stoplights at one point.
I think we've,
I
Okay.
will move the
Discuss this.
approval of item B on the consent calendar. I don't think it's on the consent calendar anymore. Okay. Under what had been item B on the consent calendar, I will move the approval of it. We didn't move it to any place.
do I hear a second?
Be in second. I'll second it.
All right, Director Kildee is seconding it. Any other comments? Please vote. Okay, the motion passes on a 3-2 vote with Directors McDonald and Morgan dissenting. All right, that concludes agenda items. Any departmental items? Any items from legal counsel?
No.
Any comments from staff? Any comments from directors?
Do
All
we
right.
know?
Go ahead.
Do we know when the next CASA conference is? Do we know the date on that yet?
Yes.
And by the way, we're waiting. That's the one thing I'm going to miss a lot is the CASA conference. You learn a lot from that conference.
January 23rd, 24th, and 25th, there's a council meeting on the 23rd, but there's not much going on the 23rd, so if anyone interested, which is what we've done in the past, drive after the council meeting and get there, and you're there for the whole 24th and 25th.
Thank you.
Any other business for the board? With that, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the board at 5:34.
Call this meeting of the Camarillo City Council to order. Ask the record to reflect that all council members are present, and ask if there are any amendments to this agenda.
No amendments, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to ask that we pull item F from the consent calendar to be voted on separately.
Oh.
We obviously don't need to
Go
talk about it.
Public Works?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And-
Item F, we're going to move to Public Works, okay?
Is that at the beginning or the first one or the second one?
It'll be after.
After, okay.
And I have some questions on H, so if you want to pull it and put it with community development,
Community Development?
sure, it might be easier.
Public Works would be more appropriate at this point for the action that's
Because you're
happening.
tearing down, not building up.
Okay, item H, pull.
Madam Mayor?
Just a
sorry,
minute,
Mrs.
let me
McDonald?
get this down, or I will
No problem.
not have it.
Sorry.
Okay,
Mrs. McDonald, are you done? I didn't mean to interrupt.
I
you.
am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I had a question, just a question on item D.
okay, when we get to the consent calendar, we'll let you ask your question.
Thanks.
And then we'll go on. There are no presentations, so now we were down to the consent calendar, and you're going to ask a question on item D.
Right, and this question is to Mr. Petropoulos. This is on the four-post vehicle lift replacement. Is that replacement lift, is that being installed outdoors, or is there cover? Is it under cover?
It is not currently under cover. It will be installed where it is currently existing, but the plan is to then cover it. There's also some mitigation measures that will be taken to avoid any elements in the meantime.
Because just as a comment, I understand that because of age and weather conditions, et cetera, that lift being outdoors has weakened it structurally, which is now is the need to replace it.
That is correct.
So we're going to see something to cover it.
And that's why the plan is to cover it, yes, sir.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on the consent calendar with the exception of items F and H?
I'll move that approval.
Second.
The motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items F and H. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Finance. Annexation number 10 to the West Camarillo Community Facilities District Number 1, Hotel Conference Center site at Las Posas and Ventura Boulevard. Resolution of intention. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, the city's bond attorney, Mary Ann Goodkind, will be presenting this item.
Thank you. This is the 10th annexation to the West Camarillo Community Facilities District Number 1. It pertains to the hotel conference site. The two owners of record are the city and TM Meehan. Because a portion of the land is outside of your previously designated future annexation area, the process is a more regular process to annex, which entails tonight's action of a resolution of intention, waiting 30 days for a public hearing, and then, if there are no majority protests, an election with the property owners. Are there any
I
questions?
have a question, yeah.
Mr. Kildee has a question.
So, did we just find out about this? I mean, in other words, why was this not put on one of the annexations that we already, approved here? Or is this something that came to our attention here?
Well, we wait until the projects are right before we annex them. 7 of your previous annexations have been more streamlined, which means all of the land that was to be annexed was in this future annexation area that was designated, I want to say 15 years ago at least. But we have found with 2 other annexations and this annexation that a portion of the property or the project was outside that map that has been that designated map. And so therefore we're doing a more regular process of annexation.
July 1988. 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
So, the property owners are just 2 entities, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
The 2 entities are it's approximately a little over 8 acres. I believe that Mr. or Meehan and Associates have about 5 acres of fee ownership. Then they also have an easement over the city portion. So they will basically have special taxes on all of the parcels, but because the city is a fee owner, we're asking the city to also be involved in the process and vote on the process.
And as far as the cost of doing this, is it done the normal way that we've always done it in the past?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Just for people in the audience or if anybody's at home, we're talking about annexations. What we're really talking about is a community facilities district that is totally within the city of Camarillo. And it was set up mainly when Spanish Hills
was developed to provide for sewers, waters, roads, and things like that. And it involved the property below Spanish Hills and going along. It also included a drain ditch that went along the airport, right along that section that we were talking about earlier, just to the west of that. And so we're talking about annexing this property into the Community Facilities District. Don't people get all excited that we're not talking about annexing people into the city. They're already in the city. I know that's a hot topic here, so I wanted to make it clear.
Correct, and the improvements have already been done. This particular parcel will receive benefit from the drainage facilities that have already been financed. So with future annexations, it should lower all the rest of the people who are in the CFD a little bit their special taxes in the future until those bonds are paid off.
Your Honor, that's what it's done throughout the past history. It reduces everybody else's as these annex in.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? What are the wishes of the council?
Move the approval of staff's recommendation.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second to approve as presented in the packet. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Public Works, item A, design and construction, Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company brine conveyance pipeline agreement with Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mary Craven. This item is to consider the subject agreement, which was requested by Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company. I'll refer to that as Pleasant Valley from here out. The request was for the city to include the design and construction of the Pleasant Valley brine conveyance pipeline, include that into the city's desalter project, and all of that at the cost being borne by Pleasant Valley. So on the screen is a map and showing the items that we're going to be discussing and that are included in the agreement. And I'll start out with a review of the location of the city's desalter project over here at the northwest corner of Los Pozos Road and Lewis Road. That project is treating by reverse osmosis brackish groundwater, creating very clean, potable water, and the byproduct of that is a brine discharge, and that brine discharge will connect out to what we call the brine line. There's a salinity management pipeline that Cayugas Municipal Water District has installed already in Lewis Road. It continues in the southwesterly direction to an ocean outfall off of Port Hueneme. So the city's project is to include what we call raw water conveyance pipelines coming from the source wells that will go to our treatment facility from well A, here just north of Los Pozos Road, and also well B, which is on Antonio behind the hospital. In blue are shown the pipelines that the city will install conveying what we're calling the raw water that will continue in Antonio and down Mar Vista, continuing east into our desalter plant site for treatment. So the city's desalter project is being implemented in basically two phases. The first phase, which is out to bid right now, is the majority of the work, which is all the on-site treatment facility, the brine line connection, and everything associated with the reverse osmosis treatment plant. The other package that we call the pipeline conveyance package is a separate design that's nearly completed and a separate construction effort that will construct the pipelines in blue, delivering the water from wells A and B over to the treatment plant. Pleasant Valley Mutual has their own brackish groundwater desalter plant planned, and it's been in the works for some time. Just recently received a CUP approval from the Planning Commission last Tuesday. And their facility is an existing well field over here on the west side of Ponderosa, north of Los Pozos. And their treatment facility will be located at this site. And that also requires, being a reverse osmosis plant, the discharge of brine. So the idea is they need a discharge to the salinity management pipeline in Lewis Road also. They've approached the city, and we've discussed the possibility and looked further into it. and verified that it is a feasible solution for their brine line to come out of their facility up here at the intersection of Ponderosa and Antonio, continue, as shown in the yellow dashed line, along Antonio. It will join the same construction location, possibly a joint trench. That's what the design is going to determine, but the construction would occur at the same time of the blue raw water pipelines and the continuation of the Pleasant Valley brine discharge pipeline in the same alignment over to the desalter site, coursing through the desalter site in a designed fashion, best location separately. Will be a separate pipeline continuing through until it joins the discharge point into the brine line in Lewis Road. As I mentioned, this is a request by Pleasant Valley to enter into an agreement whereby they would deposit sufficient funds ahead of time for the design, and then again another deposit for construction once the construction cost estimate is known, and that money would then go towards the design costs and construction costs that the city would implement in our project. To move forward with that, the agreement is necessary that lays out the provisions to accomplish this, along with an amendment to the city's design consultant, Brown and Caldwell, who's designing the desalter plant and the raw water conveyance pipelines. So attached to the staff report and part of the suggested action is an amendment to Brown and Caldwell's design services agreement to accomplish the design of Pleasant Valley's brine conveyance pipeline. At the end of design and then construction, all final costs will be accounted for. Any costs above the original deposits will then be paid for by Pleasant Valley. The agreement includes all those provisions. This agreement's been approved and signed by the Pleasant Valley Board, and that brings to staff's recommendation. Suggested action is to execute this agreement with Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company and also the agreement amendment with Brown and Caldwell for the design. And that completes my presentation.
Question?
Question.
Yes. Where they're going to put their desalination plant, is it right there at the end in those avocado orchard area?
Their desalinization plant is on their existing site, which their site is fenced. It's a narrow fenced site on the very west side of Ponderosa between Las Posas
Right.
and the Antonio. So this entire site, pretty well in the middle of it, I think, is where they're planning. They have existing wells there. They have existing other treatment and facilities there on site. Their plant, their skids for the RO system and their pre-treatment filtration will all be installed on their existing fenced site.
So you don't think they're going to get complaints like we did, being that close to houses, that we had to put up with, had to move our plant over to the other end? You don't think they'll have any kind of problem with that?
We don't anticipate any.
Okay.
Can't be very big, though.
Question.
Is that all, Mr. Morgan?
That's all.
Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, so Dave, that's where the need for their brine line comes in, is how are they going to generate their need for the brine line?
So they're installing a reverse osmosis treatment plant. Their wells are impacted the same as the city's wells with brackish groundwater, and it needs to be treated. And their wells pump directly into their distribution system, and this reverse osmosis plant will treat that water to acceptable standards, and the byproduct of that process, that treatment process, is a concentrated brine that must be disposed of.
And the size of that is going to be enough to handle the brine issue for them? The size of the pipe and
Correct. That's what this design effort is doing, is identifying and determining the size of the pipe. And also our connection, our plant is, we're treating 4,500 acre feet per year of water. Theirs is designed for 800 acre feet per year. So,
quite a bit.
Almost 6 times less the size, or ours is about 6 times greater.
Thank you.
Is that all? Do you have more questions, Mr.
I don't,
Kildee?
no.
Mr. Tremblay?
Just to follow up on Mr. Kildee's question, though, Mr. Klotzel, 800 800 acre feet is a gross number, because ours will be 4,500 acre feet, but net 3,800 acre feet produced.
Correct.
So you can take the balance of that and chalk that up to much of that is going to go in the brine line, correct?
I mean, a
Difference
portion
between
of it.
3,800 to 40, the difference between 4,500 acre for the city's desalter.
Right.
4,500 acre feet less 3,800 acre feet net. How much of that is going in the brine line?
That's correct. The difference of that.
The difference, okay. And the same thing with
That's
PV
correct.
Mutual.
That's correct. Roughly, and I don't know the exact numbers, but typically you see between 70 and 80%, 85% recovery.
Through the
It really
post
depends.
RO process.
Correct. I mean, it just depends on the case by case situation with the water quality.
One thing I couldn't tell on the map is the city's raw water line, is that in the public right of way?
Yes.
Okay. And the agreement itself, and I'm looking at the top of page 4, bottom of page 3, top of page 4, it says that that Pleasant Valley Mutual is responsible for operation and maintenance, I'm paraphrasing, operation and O&M of that brine line, and the company has ownership of the brine line, but the company isn't responsible for operation or maintenance of that portion of the brine line. The city's responsible for it, correct? I just want to make sure I understand who is operating and maintaining the company's brine line.
Wherever they,
Correct. On the city's site, right? Our Pleasant Valley Groundwater Desalter site, the city is responsible for the operation, surveillance, and repair. We want to control what's on our site.
Right, but all costs that are attributable to that effort by the city to operate and maintain that portion of the brine line attributable to PV Mutual, those costs are being picked up by the Mutual Water Company shareholders, not by city
That's
residents,
correct. That's correct. And what we actually anticipate is a separate follow-up agreement for the operations and maintenance and costs sharing, because there's a cost for us to discharge into the brine line in Lewis Road. So we will have a follow-up agreement with those detailed specifics.
But the bottom line is that the city taxpayers aren't subsidizing the Mutual Water Company's shareholders with regard to the operation of the Mutual's brine line, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? What are the wishes of the council?
I'll move it. I'll move the recommended suggested action.
Is there a second?
I'll second with a comment. I think it's only wise to do it all at once and tear the streets up once and be done with it.
Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Next item would be consent F, which we thoroughly discussed earlier. I'm not sure if we need to discuss again, but we certainly need to vote on it, and it was requested that we vote on it separately. So who pulled that?
I did,
You
so.
did? So did you want to discuss it or just vote on it
No,
again?
you just might tell people what it is, so.
This is the same, but for the city, not for the sanitary district, the design and construction. Oh,
no, it's
go back to F.
steady.
Las Posas Widening Conceptual Study, ST 5066, amendment to on-call professional services agreement. And this is regarding Las Posas Road widening. So we thoroughly discussed it earlier, Mr.
We did, but I want to interject
Certainly.
one more thought. And thanks for the thorough discussion, because I think we put it in the right context. But as I'm sitting here, I think even more strongly now that the city should move forward with that study. I had two principal reasons. One is I think it's based on just existing conditions as they are right now. But secondly, with regard to informing a future council's analysis of any environmental review documents coming out of the county, if we do not have this data, if we do not have this information, then any issues that we take with the substance in our response with the substance or the adequacy of that CEQA NEPA document are going to be suspect, because
Right.
we will not have the data to back us up. So that is a reason to do this now. It's not because the study in and of itself is growth-inducing in any way. We have to have the ability to respond to the county's environmental review document. For that reason as well, I'm going to vote yes on this.
Could I just make a follow-up comment to that? I can certainly understand what you're saying about it's always helpful to have as much information as you can when you make those decisions, particularly when you're reviewing something that another agency has overseen the preparation of. But under that context, then you would be required to do a study on every piece of their study. So it's where do you stop? So if you're comfortable with it, I'm not going to argue with it, but I don't think you want to start saying, well, we got to be prepared for every piece of their
In some ways,
type.
it's not a perfect analogy, but in some ways, it's as if a developer were coming to the city saying, I want to develop a piece of property, and we're going to have to go through an environmental review process. And we have to have the ability, the city has to have the ability to independently analyze that and assess it. In this case, the city is not right. In this case, the city is not going to be the lead agency for purposes of that airports project. And as arguably a responsible agency, but in terms of giving this city the ability to substantively respond in a way that makes sense and backs up what we're saying, in the event that we see a problem with that study, or with what the county is doing, then we need to have this data.
And I can understand that, but are you going to do a noise study? Are you going to do all the other studies that would be entailed in expanding the airport?
Well,
that's just something to think about.
Why don't,
I don't want to argue it now, but
no, that's okay.
Not on the agenda.
Why don't we see? Well, but here's the response quickly. Why don't we see what the county is going to come out with? Because we don't even have. Has there been any kind of a scoping notice, Mr. Vaca, from the county with regard to the CEQA NEPA review?
No.
Yeah, we don't even know what the heck the county is going to do yet, but we do know that we have this issue.
Right. Okay, what are the wishes of the council?
I'll move the approval of item F on consent.
Oops. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote. Oops, I'm sorry.
Other direction.
Revote.
So used to voting green.
Revote. Motion carries 3-2 with Mr. Morgan and Mrs. McDonald dissenting. You had asked that we have 3 minutes, and we do have quite a...
I think this is a quick question on H, if that's...
On H, consent H.
And this has to do with the demolition of the structures on the stock lumber yard. My question has to do with the financing or the funding source to pay for this. And it's, according to the budget impact, is coming from the Camarillo Corridor Projects Fund. So we have to use that fund versus housing funds, even though it's going to be a housing project? Or that's just my question on the funding.
It is housing funds, and we account for those housing funds.
So it's within it, okay.
Corridor project.
So it's definitely housing funds within.
Yes.
Okay.
What are the wishes of the council?
I'll approve item H on consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve consent H. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. That finishes up Public Works. I think we should stop at this point and go to the study session. We also have a closed session. I don't know if we'll have time to go to it or not, but I'll ask the attorney to please tell us under what circumstances we would go into closed session if we have time.
Yes, it would be a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Number of potential cases is 1.
We will recess to a study session and perhaps to a closed session, and we'll be back at 7:30 for open council meeting. And by the way, the study session is an open meeting.
Jan, that's
Mary Ann, I didn't recognize you without your pigtails.
Huh? Crazy.
The Camarillo City Council back to order. Ask the record to reflect that all council members are present. And I'll ask Mrs. McDonald to lead us in the flag salute. Please rise and join us. With your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have several presentations tonight, but the first one is to Richard Petropoulos, our retiring Administrative Services Director. When someone leaves the city after a number of years, they receive a city tile, and there aren't that many of them out there.
Well, I'm privileged.
You will be privileged. You're not yet. We thank you for your service to the city. You have been with us for a long time. You started as our IT person, hardware, made that very clear to us. You were a hardware guy. And you moved up, and now you have been for several years, for many years, the Administrative Services Director, stood up the department, and have overseen everything from purchasing trucks to human resources. It is quite a wide department. So the city thanks you, Richard, for your service, Director of Administrative Services, May 1997 to December 2018. Thank you for all of your service. We appreciate what you've done for the city. And I'm going to let you say something.
Okay. Well, I would just like to say what an honor and a privilege it has been to work here at the city. It's a well-run city, and the people have been fantastic. And again, I appreciate working with each and every one of you. I appreciate the staff and those people that I've worked with in the public. And we'll miss you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. I think John wants to take a picture. Hey.
Your Honor, can I say a few things?
Certainly.
You can sit, if you'd like to sit, you can go ahead and sit down, Richard. Yeah. I think Richard and myself, I think we broke in to the city just about the same time. And it's been Richard, 20? How many years do you have? It's been 20?
A little over 21.
21 years. And I think if there's one word to describe Richard Petropoulos, and that is professional. And he is a very professional person. You have trained a lot of our employees under you. I knew you were always the go-to guy. Anything that I ever had that I needed an answer to, you were always there. And you're kind of a city employee, Richard. You're at the top of the food chain. And I say that very, very much from the bottom of my heart. And your wife, Pam, I know is going to really enjoy your time together. I know you want to travel, and there's a lot of things you want to do. But happy for you, somewhat sad for us, though, Richard, because you took on some challenges in the city, and you hit a home run with them. And I want to thank you for your time that you've spent. If Pam's out there, I want to thank your wife for sharing you with, there she is, with us. Appreciate that, Pam, and your family. And I'm personally going to miss you, Richard, but I'm happy for you, too. So it's it's a little bit bittersweet for me, but, Godspeed, as they say, Richard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Ken.
I've worked with a lot of staff makeups throughout these 38 years, and probably the one that's the last one, including you and Tom Fox, were some of the best staff that we've had in overall 38 years. I've never seen you without a smile. I've never seen you get mad or angry, which is great because sometimes you can be put in that position. But I really enjoyed knowing you, and I know you're going to take some vacations, you said, but that'll get old. You need something else to do when you get back. So maybe I'll join you in some of those now. But it's been a terrific time having you guys here and been very successful. You look at our history in the last 10, 20 years, and you see how well the city's done. And so I think part of that's attributed to you. Thank you.
Richard, let me just do the flip side. I only got to work with you for 2 years, and I wish I had had the opportunity to work with you for a lot longer period. Councilmember Kildee hit the nail on the head. I think you are extremely professional, and that's the adjective that comes to my mind when I've been working with you. So thank you for your wonderful years of service to the city.
You've all said most of what we would all think the same. You've been a terrific person to work with, and we really do appreciate that. We appreciate knowing your family. Pam's been a special part of the city as well, and we wish you happy retirement. Enjoy the family. Don't go hunting and kill Bambi. So. He's an avid hunter. That's why I say that. But enjoy life, and you're still both so young. You can have a great time and enjoy those grandchildren and just enjoy life. Thank you.
Give a round of applause for Rick. Okay, next we have some more presentations. Next, I'm going to be blinded by the light.
Uh-oh.
Next, we're going to make sure the screen works. Okay, I'd like to call up Jim Heron and Danny Crow from the American Legion. And Alex Kreider from Conejo Mountain Memorial Park. Come on up, both of you. Okay, I have some certificates of recognition for what they did to help us with the Veterans Memorial. But before we do that, the day that we dedicated the Veterans Memorial, I was trying to juggle a microphone and a large book of what all I was supposed to say, and I didn't have any place to put the book, and it didn't work very well. But there was something I had planned to say that I didn't. So I'm going to read it tonight. It's called "It is the Soldier," and it's by Charles M. Provence. It is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to protest. It's the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It's the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It's the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. So with that thought in mind, and a lot of respect for those who gave their lives so that all of us could enjoy all the freedoms that we have in the United States, we entered into a project with the Department of Defense to thank Vietnam veterans, and then it grew and grew into having a plaque for those who had given their lives in the Vietnam War on the back of our current memorial at the corner of Constitution Park, into something that would recognize all of the veterans who had given their lives
to protect protect our freedoms. And so it started with an idea from the American Legion, and the American Legion designed the plaques, and then it became quite an expensive proposition, and Conejo Mountain stepped in and said, we want to make sure this happens. And they provided a significant amount of money so that it could be completed. The city built the memorial, and then there was the plaques that had to be put onto the memorial. So we want to thank you. We want to thank the American Legion Camarillo Post 741. The Camarillo City Council is a partner of the Vietnam War 50th Anniversary Commemoration, authorized by PL Public Law 110-181, recognizes and thanks the Camarillo American Legion Post 741 for its invaluable contribution to the Veterans Memorial Monument, unveiled November 10, 2018, in Constitution Park to honor and remember the ultimate sacrifice made by Camarillo's fallen heroes while serving in the armed forces of the United States. This one is a similar one, but it names Conejo Mountain Funeral Home for its assistance and participation, and we truly appreciate what all of you did to help us make this come to fruition. Have the one for the Conejo Mountain. Thank you. And I have the one for the American Legion. And thank you both. Would you like to say something?
Yes, I would. There was a lot of work went into this thing, and there was a lot of times we didn't think it was going to get off the ground and fly like it did. The day we unveiled it, I was almost in tears because it's one of the most beautiful monuments I've ever looked at. And I would like to thank the council on behalf of the American Legion and all the veterans in the Camarillo area for working so closely with us and allowing us to do this. Without your okay and cooperation, we couldn't have got this done. That's all I have.
Yeah, on behalf of the Post, I kind of echo what Dan has to say, but it's really a great tribute to recognize and honor those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, and also remembering their families and bringing them out here. And I think that was awesome.
The only thing that I would add is there's 36 names out there, and it's on behalf of Conejo Mountain, our staff, James Garcia, our ground superintendent, is here tonight. It's a privilege, it's an honor, and it's humbling to be a part of a small part to make sure that those 36 names and those 36 families from this area will never be forgotten. So,
nice.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your part. I think John wants to get pictures of us with that, with your two proclamations.
Post-it note.
Thank you. Okay, public comments. I was going to say I didn't have any cards, but I didn't believe that. Okay, I'll call the names in the order that I received them. I'll go ahead and explain our rules for public comments. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. There's a clock that I can see and a clock that you can see. They run down at the same time. When the clock gets to 2 minutes, a yellow light will come on and a tone will sound. And then when that leaves 1 minute left, and we ask you to wrap up in that 1 minute. And when your minute is up, then a red light will come on and there'll be another tone, and we ask you to finish by then. So the first one I have is from Matthew Lorimer.
Good evening, City Council. Before I begin, I hope we'll close the meeting. 3 American soldiers were killed in a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. That makes 11 for the year. Very sad. Next thing I want to talk about is term limits. I know Measure E was brought up, basically. I believe Measure M forced the city council. They didn't like 8 years. But I do have to give Tony credit for bringing that up. He was the only councilman. I know councilmen weren't really thrilled about having term limits. You guys have been in office for over 100 years, so thanks to the voters for passing that. It's really important. It makes a difference. And thank you, Tony. And thanks for the Measure M people who spent a lot of time out there on the streets collecting signatures. And thanks to the voters again. It's needed. You know, the next thing I want to talk about is during the Measure M, I was at the Camarillo Ranch. This is an envelope. When somebody collects fees and they fill this up and then the front pocket, they put it in there, there's a problem. Camarillo Ranch lost $70,000 last year. It's time for an overhaul. That board should resign. It's time to have the people picked, names put in a hat and picked out so we make sure they're not associated with certain councilmen. It's time for an overhaul. Camarillo Ranch needs to be overhauled. People should be fired. We should clean up the mess. There's no excuse for it. The next thing, I have a present for Mr. Morgan here. This is a Monopoly game. It's called the Cheaters Edition. It says on the back, Mike, you can break the rules, dream, scheme. Maybe you and Rob Campanelli can get together. That's for you. I got to tell you, you know, again, we have a new city council coming on board, and this goes for the future. We need to have policies in place. And let me tell you, back when I ran, what was going on is owner Arco was approached because somebody said they were a code enforcement officer. Also, we had the donut store over there by Ralph's over there, Foster's. Somebody came in there. You know, shenanigans should never go on in any city. Again, we need reform when it comes to that. Finance reform. I also believe the city attorney should be an elected position. Too much power sometimes can be at a city council. Raises, it's time to have a citizen advisory committee. And not picked by the city council. It should be done, if you want to run, the name should be put in a hat that night in front of the cameras. They should be picked out. That way we know that it's not somebody that's your pal, your buddy, or anybody else. It's time for some reforms. The people have spoken. We're going to get a new council. I look forward to seeing some changes at the city of Camarillo. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Next card is from James Thompson.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Jim Thompson. I'm president of the Camarillo Wings Association, which puts on the air show, Camarillo Air Show, called Wings Over Camarillo every year. Our next one is the third week in August coming up. But I would really like to thank you for the support that you've given us, particularly this last year, and hopefully the support in the future. Camarillo now, in the third week in August, has become a destination point for a lot of people coming to the air show. We have worked over the years, and somebody brought this number up earlier, 38 years we've been doing this. And each year we're trying to make it better, and with your help, we're trying to make it the top air show in Southern California, given the area that we have. We can't do a big box show like the Blue Angels and stuff like that because we simply don't have the airspace. But Bill Thomas is our air boss. He runs the show, and he is primarily the mover for the acts that we get and the increase in quality that way. We run a STEM program, which has gotten a lot of recognition lately and brought in high schools and whatnot from the surrounding area. And this is Kelly, our CFO, and she is responsible for taking care of what you give us to make sure it goes in the right places. And speaking of what you give us, we have given back over the last 7 years over $350,000 back into the community. So again, we thank you for your support, and hopefully that'll continue. We have this plaque for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question, Your Honor?
Certainly.
You guys have done a fantastic job, by the way. That last air show was terrific. That one that went up way up there and came down, the lady, fantastic. I don't know how she didn't pass out. Before the air show, what kind of activities do you recall having out there in that airport?
Before 38 years ago?
Uh-huh. Do you remember the hot rods? They closed the airport down and the hot rod races out there in the track?
I don't
Oh yeah, they had them. It was fantastic. They had the hot rods out there with putting gas and putting alcohol in the back of the tires, see fire burning out. It was great, but couldn't do that forever.
FAA kind of restricts us on some of those things.
Yep, they did after that.
So we're trying to increase the quality of our show and the events and things like that, and the educational opportunities that the kids have through the STEM program. So.
Well, we started helping, I think, last year, and then we helped again this year. And I think that your shows are wonderful. They're very popular. Whenever I go out to an air show, I see people that I've known from other parts of Southern California that have come here to the air show. I had no idea they were coming. You know, you just bump into them. But
well, we draw from all over Southern California, and it really has become a destination point in the third week in August.
It has. So we're announcing now that it's the third weekend of August next year?
Correct.
Okay. Mark your calendars. Thank you very much for this. This is a beautiful plaque.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roy Northrup.
Good evening. My name is Roy Northup. I'm representing the Board of Directors for the Camarillo Arts Council. The board regrets to inform you we will not be able to produce the summer events in the park for 2019. As we all know, the summer concerts have been an important tradition and signature series event for the city. It has been through the partnership of the Camarillo Arts Council and the City of Camarillo that have built the concert series up to the huge success it is today. The City of Camarillo is known throughout California as having one of the best concerts in the park series. The Camarillo Arts Council has reached the point it does not have the volunteers to continue on the current level. For many years, we have tried to find more volunteers to assist us with this labor-intense event. Unfortunately, most who have interest find they do not have the time or the energy to commit to 9 weekends out of their summer. Knowing the volunteers were getting fewer and fewer, those left were getting tired and older.
We're all getting older.
We knew this day would come. It has been because of our president that many of us continue serving on the board. Jan McDonald has been president of the Arts Council for over 20 years and has been the glue that has kept us together and continuing our work for our community. Her commitment to the community and the sense of obligation to keep these signature events going has kept many of us on as well. She felt that as long as she was on the city council, she had a way to keep the concerts going. We respected that sense of obligation and agreed to stay on for many more years than most of us would have wanted. Since that time has come, and the board feels it's time to turn the summer concert season over to the City of Camarillo. It's time for the City of Camarillo to do as much most cities do, produce the free summer concerts in the park. For more than 20 years, the city has had the benefit of volunteers to do the work most cities pay someone to do. The Arts Council leaves you a well-run operation that can easily be assumed by the city as such Camarillo with the necessary resources. If the City Council elects to do so, we have a great sound and lighting company in place, the venue, and the audience that, for the most part, know the rules. The city simply needs to get a designated staff or hire a professional company to take over the role the Arts Council has played. The production and logistics. There are many companies out there and many other cities, examples to follow. If the concerts are to continue, we believe it's the city that is the best position to make it happen. It is now in the ballpark with plenty of time to put it together for 2019. 7 months is more than enough time to prepare for 2019 summer season.
Roy, I'll have to ask you to finish up.
I'm finishing up, thank you. Summer season, we hope the City Council decides to do this for the community. And I also would like to thank Richard for all the things he's helped us with this year, and his staff have been fantastic all the years. Richard, enjoy your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Can I make just one comment? I just want to thank the Arts Council for all their years of service of putting on this event. We appreciate it.
Next card's from Lee DeVia.
Good evening. My name is Lee DeVia.
Sorry.
I'm the Vice President of the Camarillo Arts Council. We hope the community understands that under these circumstances, it's time for the Camarillo Arts Council to pass these great community events, the summer concerts in the park, to the city of Camarillo, who has been our partner for many years. We perhaps are the victim of our own success. The concerts have been unusually successful. Unfortunately for our volunteers, we have become fewer and fewer. We sent a letter dated November 13th, 2018 to the city manager, notifying him of the Camarillo Arts Council's Board of Directors' decision that we will not be able to produce the 2019 summer events in the park. You may not have received a copy of this letter. Rather, simply a harsh negative email from the city manager. We feel his tone was totally unprofessional and showed his lack of understanding and respect for those of our community who have served our community for many years. It is ironic that after telling Jan McDonald this decision would taint her legacy, he is the first one to try to do just that. After 28 years of public service, along with more than 20 years of bringing the summer concerts to the park, to our community, her legacy will be about what she has accomplished and the time she has served our community. How many people would volunteer more than 9 weekends out of her summer for more than 20 years, which equates to 3.8 years, and countless hours throughout the year to bring the community the summer events in the park? It's unthinkable the city manager could take such a negative, harsh tone in notifying you of the board's decision. I trust the community will understand that it's time for the city of Camarillo to step up and take these premier events with plenty of time to do the 2019 season. Plenty of time. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Camarillo Arts Council, we'd like to thank the City Council, city staff, and the community for many years of success. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the City Council on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to public hearings. There is one public hearing, Camarillo Area Transit Hours of Operation. I will recuse myself because my husband and I own property that's less than 500 feet from one of the trolley stops. Mr.
I also have to recuse myself because I own a business that is within that jurisdiction, that there is a trolley stop within the 300 to 500 feet as well.
So we will leave.
So I think it then falls to me to go ahead and just assume the chair for this particular item. Why don't we start this with a report from staff, please?
Yes, thank you. This public hearing is to consider adopting a resolution approving modifications to Camarillo Area Transit, or CAT, service hours. And this is specifically for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. The ADA requires CAT to offer complimentary paratransit services, which under CAT services is our dial-a-ride service, for a minimum of the same operating hours as any CAT fixed route service, including the trolley. On the screen is the current service hours of both of these services, and again, the purpose here for this public hearing and recommended resolution is to bring the hours of operation of the Dial-A-Ride to perform in the same hours, at least the same hours as the trolley, the fixed route. So we can see Monday through Thursday, it's not an issue. Under current service hours, the Dial-A-Ride operates for a longer span of time on both sides, earlier and goes later than the trolley. The trolley service hours were designed to extend later into the evening on Friday and Saturday, so with the ending time of 10 p.m. The Dial-A-Ride service hours end 1 hour earlier than that, so there's an hour difference there that the Dial-A-Ride is not offered for that last hour of trolley service. Likewise, on Sunday, there's an hour difference there. And what we looked at on taking a look at how to modify hours, and this was presented to the Streets and Transportation Committee on August 28th, and then discussed and recommended modifications were recommended by the City Council in the study session on October 24th. And the proposed modifications we landed on were based on looking at the last hour of service. And the recommended modification is to decrease the hours of service for the trolley in the evening by 1 hour, bringing the ending time to 9 p.m. to match the ending time of the Dial-A-Ride service. We looked at the last hour ridership numbers for the trolley, and they were significantly lower at the last hour of Friday and Saturday than the average ridership hours throughout the rest of the week. So you see a relatively minor impact to ridership by decreasing the hours on Friday and Saturday for the trolley. Estimated savings from those reduction in 1 hour on Friday and Saturday at an annual savings of approximately $5,000. Then the other adjustment, it's a little bit of a hybrid approach, is rather than reduce ridership on the trolley on Sunday in the afternoon, which has a pretty decent ridership in the last hour. It's not that late in the evening. Still have ridership on the trolley. And then also Dial-A-Ride, we find in the last hour of service on Sundays is actually quite high for that last hour compared to the average for the rest of the operating hours through the week. So it makes sense that we would expect to have continued demand for that hour between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Sunday. So as you can see, the last hour now align with ending at 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays and 6 p.m. on Sunday for both services. The possible increase, it depends on ridership in that last hour on Sundays for Dial-A-Ride, but we're possibly looking at an increase of $4,000 for adding that last hour of service on the Dial-A-Ride on Sunday evening, ending in a net annual savings of $1,000. So minimal impacts to existing ridership, actually increasing services on Sunday for Dial-A-Ride, which we fully expect there to be demand for that. We again recommend these modifications. It brings it in line with the requirements of the ADA. And that completes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Klotzel. Are there questions from council members?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Why don't you go ahead?
It's just very rare that we find ourselves in the position that we have to meet a federal standard, and it doesn't cost us money. So we should embrace that. And it makes perfect sense that we make the adjustment, because it sounds like it really is a win for everyone and provides the same level of service.
Mr. Morgan, a question?
When we were in the committee that looked at this and saw the hours and when they were being used, he's exactly correct. Like that Dial-A-Ride on Sunday, there's a huge difference there than the other one. And we voted to go ahead and extend that so people would take the Dial-A-Ride and have a little more time.
All right. This is a matter that's set for public hearing. So we're going to go ahead and invite any testimony from the public. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any cards for this item? Is there anyone who wishes to step forward and testify as to this matter? If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. What is the desire of the council?
I would move to adopt a resolution approving modifications to the Camarillo area transit service hours.
Second that.
All right, I hear a motion and a second. Please vote. And the vote is 3-0 in adoption of the motion. That concludes this item, and we will invite our other council members to come back up. Okay.
Next item is departmental, water rates and changes, resolution setting rates and changes. Can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Mark Uribe. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance for the city, and I'll be giving just a brief summary of the action here tonight. It is a resolution to be considered to increase water rates by 1%, and that is actually a decrease in what was previously adopted. We do a 2-year process when we consider water and wastewater rates. It starts off with a comprehensive rate study in summertime, and then we have several meetings to review the results. And then when we come up with a proposed rates, we have a Proposition 218 notification period. Starts in September. It's required by law to notify the ratepayers 45 days in advance of a public hearing, which would be held to consider any rate increases, and that's usually done in November. So when we did the public hearing in September of 2017, the Prop 218 notice in September, we did the public hearing in November 2017. Council adopted a resolution for 2 years of rates, 2018 and 2019, both being effective on January 1st of those years. And what we do that I don't think every city does or every agency does is we come back in the second year and review all of the assumptions that went into the rate study. Sometimes things change. Capital projects could change, costs could change, anticipated revenues could change. There's a number of different variables that go into the study that are considered, and things could change. So by looking at the second year and updating the information with new budgetary figures and new information, we can then determine whether or not that second year that was adopted is still necessary. So that's where we are tonight. We are in the second year of the Prop 218, second year that was adopted, and after meeting and updating the water study with new information, it was determined that we could do a 1% increase rather than a 2%. So what's required to make that happen is to adopt a new resolution for the rates to go into effect January 1st, 2019. And that concludes the brief report, if there are any questions.
Okay, and just to make sure everybody understands, we're talking about city water customers. There are 5 water purveyors in the city of Camarillo, and this will affect people who receive water from the city of Camarillo. So are there any questions? I have a question. Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, Mark, pardon the fun, but this 1% is going to be enough money to keep the city afloat? Just want to make sure that...
You've been working on that.
That is correct. The 1% will allow us to achieve all of the goals and the targets that we had set for the system.
And that's been vetted by the consultant, and the staff worked many months on this.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Mr. Morgan.
This reminds me of the old days when we first started as city councilman. And every time you raise the rates, anything, 4% or 3%, man, they were in his house was full. But you notice now we're only doing this 1%, and I think this council has kept its pledge to make sure we try to keep these rates down. Thank you.
I don't know about when you first started, but when I got on the council, they'd gone for years and hadn't ever had a rate increase, and then we had to raise it a whole lot.
What I just said.
Yeah.
And then we found out that we don't do that.
We don't do that.
We were newbies, and we decided to do it little at a time instead of huge.
Okay, I don't have any cards. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the council on this issue? Seeing no one come forward, I will open it up for council discussion or a motion.
Your Honor, I move to adopt resolution setting the amount of water rates and charges for January 1st, 2019.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
One of the things that has concerned me all along as we've been working on the desalter
and the huge amount of money that we've been setting aside, and not, of course, we don't know the grants that we're going to get. But it has seemed to me that we're putting an awful lot of the cost, the capital cost of that project that is a 20-some-year project on the backs of the current ratepayers. We're trying to do it without debt, which is wonderful. But I think one of the things that we have to do is to try to spread that cost out and not, as I say, put it on the back of the current ratepayers. I think I gave that same speech last year, and I'm glad to see we're down from 2% to 1%. But I think it's something to think about in the future as you go to finish this, that it's a long-term project, and perhaps long-term ways of financing it and paying for it is a more equitable way to treat the current ratepayers.
Please vote. Motion carries 4-1 with Mrs. McDonald dissenting. Okay, I believe we go back to page 3 of the agenda. We completed all of these study sessions. We completed the closed session. So that leaves, unless I missed something, that leaves new business, oral communications, items which do not require action. Is that right? Okay, City Manager.
No comments, Madam Mayor.
City Attorney.
I have no items.
City Council, I'll start with Mrs. McDonald.
I guess I just want to make one comment about what was announced earlier to the council and to the public regarding the concerts in the park. I want to take the opportunity to public thank all of the board members over the years that have served on the board, all the volunteers that have helped, and there have been many that have come and gone, and some that aren't with us anymore. We all remember John Hills and how many years he spent on the Arts Council. It took us, at least 20 years to build it to the point that it is today, and it's a lot of people working very hard, and it is that close working relationship with the city. Richard's department is fantastic, and they have done a wonderful job in truly being a partner and making sure we're able to pull that off 7 times every summer. And it's tough to see the day that we have to pass it on. I'm hoping all of you find a way to keep it going. And I have faith that it will happen. We're kind of got a pretty good oiled machine out there of a way to do it, and I think it will be easy for hopefully the city to find either a contractor or another organization to carry it on as your partner. It is indeed an important part of this community, and it's with that we pass the torch, and again want to thank all of the board members and thank the community for the support over the years that have helped us to grow it to the point it is, from a sleepy afternoon in the park to a park that we think isn't a success unless we're flowing over the hills and we've got 6,000-7,000 people in the park. So we thank you all for that, and it has certainly been a privilege and an honor to have done this for many years, as it has been an honor to sit in this seat for many years. We have a wonderful community, and it is indeed a pleasure to have served you.
Mr. Morgan.
Your Honor, we had 4 of my major meetings we canceled out this month because of the holiday, but Ventura County Air Quality Board, the Association of Water Agencies, and the Airport Authority had no meetings. And so I don't have to report on those this year, my last time. And also I was gone a week and a half to my sons and grandsons and kids up in Reno, up there. And it's fantastic. It was great weather. I'd like to also thank my wife, because she and I we helped found the Arts Council in 1981, and we had concerts in the park, and we've been part of that board and worked our little tails off. I think Lee will justify or validate that for all those years, and we remain on the board. And it's hard to say goodbye to the Camarillo Arts Council. That's it.
Can I make one comment just to follow up on that before you leave?
Certainly.
I want to make it clear that I do want to make it clear that the Camarillo Arts Council will continue to exist. It's just that we can't, we don't have the manpower and the volunteers to do the labor-intensive concerts in the park. So the Arts Council will still exist. We'll look for some other way of serving the community that is not quite as labor intensive and consumes so many hours and physical strength.
Mr. Tremblay?
In terms of meetings or matters attended, on November 15th, I attended Sergeant Helis's memorial service in Thousand Oaks, and it was a moving and emotional service. Later that same day, I attended the Clean Power Alliance board meeting, but remotely from Calabasas. No way I was going to be able to get down to Los Angeles to make that meeting in time, so I did it by teleconference. On November 16th, we had the Economic Development Committee with Mr. Kildee and myself. This week, on November 26th, the Finance Committee with Mrs. Craven and myself. And I had the privilege of representing the council yesterday on very short notice for the Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Month award, the first award of this school year at Monte Vista. The recipient was Ms. Keisha McDonough. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. A really inspiring, exceptional RSP teacher. And I think I did say at that event that I thought all teachers are exceptional. I guess she was picked because she's just particularly exceptional. We'll go with that. I had one question and then one comment. The question is with regard to the old courthouse property and that process. Do we have any dates or ETA from the consultant on when the first public workshop for that process might occur? Because I want to make sure that we get that publicized. It may be after the holidays, but do we have?
Yes, we anticipated later in January. We're actually in the midst of finalizing the dates now. We were working on draft notices today, and we have met on that today. And once that's finalized, we'll definitely publish that and put it on the website.
Right, and I'm hoping that we do even more than that. We get it out on Facebook. We get it. We broadcast
that.
it widely.
Absolutely,
it would be good to have robust notice on that, so we have large community input. And then finally, I just simply wanted to say thank you to Mrs. McDonald and Mr. Morgan for their years of service to the city. And with that,
We have another council meeting Wednesday.
we have December 5, right? Yeah. Okay, so I did it in advance. I'll say it again.
Do it twice.
We'll take it.
I'll do it on December 5. Thank you.
Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, I attended in an Economic Development Committee meeting with Mr. Tremblay. I, too, attended the memorial service, as Mr. Tremblay has so stated. It was very, very moving. It's actually the second one that I've attended, and I hope that I don't have to attend anymore. A couple of things. The streets are really looking really, really good in this city.
They are.
And I want to commend the staff and the council and the residents for putting up with that. But as one person used to say, it's kind of like making sausage. It's kind of messy, but in the end, it tastes pretty good. So the streets really look good, and I really can. We've always had really, really great streets compared to others, but now especially. So I want to commend them on that. And I also want to make a plug to it's a holiday season, and if you can shop local, is a really good thing in numerous ways. So I did say to the Arts Council, I want to thank you for putting on the concerts at the park. And that's all I have tonight.
Folks, shop at Kildee's.
Well, I didn't say that.
He didn't say that. He said shop local.
Shop local, yes.
I attended a ribbon cutting at the Glamour Studio, and I attended the Investment Committee meeting with Mr. Tremblay on Monday morning. I would like to thank you very much for stepping in at the very last minute for the Teacher of the Month. Unfortunately, the Chamber hadn't notified us until yesterday morning that that was going to happen. And I hope they'll notify us of future ones a lot sooner than that. So if anybody from the Chamber is out there listening, the message is for you. I attended
2 Geo Bowls, one at Oxnard College and one at Cape yesterday. I love going to the geography bees or Geo Bowls or whatever that each one is called. The amount of knowledge those kids have is fantastic about very small little places or very small little things all over the world. And then I attended on Friday afternoon from 1:30 till 6:30 a Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency meeting. And I got to tell you, I have never, ever, I've been there now, 12 years or something? I've never seen an agency operate like this. I've just got, I want to share with you what on earth has been happening. We're supposed to have this groundwater sustainability plan adopted. The plan for our agency was to have it adopted and in effect, have the amount of water that each pumper could pump designated and adopted by January 1st in the Oxnard Pleasant Valley area, plain. So we have been going since September, I guess, twice a month. And something will come out in our packets. And then a board member will get this big creative idea and throw it in, and people just jump on it. And it completely changes the way the allocations go. And so I'll say, this is completely different than what people came to talk on. And other people might have wanted to talk on this if they had known it was going to go this way. And so I don't see how we can vote on this today and kind of get the attorney to say, gee, it's radically different, so maybe you'll have to put it off. And so we've been putting off and putting off and putting off. And the last time, meeting on Friday afternoon, about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, somebody came up with another great idea that changed it all. And it was supposed to be voted on the 4th. The problem is it couldn't be put into print and advertised legally before December 4th. So they're going to put it off till January. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I'll tell you, it's a horrible way to run a government agency. That's the best I can say. I used to say something about the Area Housing Authority. This one's much worse. And I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you all had a happy and a good Thanksgiving. At our house, we had 10 Texans show up, and so we went from evacuees the week before to Texas relatives, and they left yesterday morning, so I'm hoping things will get back to normal here pretty soon at our house.
You're not talking with a drawl or anything?
Well, we were yawling all over the place for a week. 5 days. 5 days is all. But when they left, I was cautious because of the way this year has gone at our house. I didn't say, y'all come again.
That's easy to do.
Yeah, I bit my lip on that one. Too much company all year. Anyway, with all of that, we will adjourn the meeting until next Wednesday, December 5th at 7:30 p.m.